Hey, Half Hour listeners, we're going to get right to the pot in a second. Two bets for you tonight before we get going. One, I like the Timberwolves giving 4 points against Brooklyn. Brooklyn's coming off a really tough loss against New York. They blew a big lead. Um, that was about the best effort they've given in a while. I think the Timberwolves need to get on track with playing better basketball. I think there's going to be an emphasis on that. I know they're on a back-to-back, but I just feel like this is a game where talent's going to win out. And you're going to have a supremely focused Timberwolves team that really hasn't played great basketball in a couple games. The schedule's been tough. I know it's 3 or 4 for them. I still feel like this is going to be a Timberwolves game. The other bet I think you want to look at tonight, the Celtics, their first half over has almost been a lock all season long. It's 59.5 tonight against the Heat. The Heat are going to be ready to play. But if it's under 60 with the Celtics, I think it's a bet you got to make. I wouldn't drop a ton of money on this, but this is a bet you have to make anytime it's under 60 for the Celtics. So those are my two picks for tonight. Again, go with your gut. Don't listen to me.
You're listening to
They're gonna call it a hard foul. They're gonna call it a hard foul.
offering in-depth analysis on all things Boston Celtics with your hosts, Jim and Mike Quigley.
Hey, here we are for another edition of Hot Foul. As always, I'm Jim Quigley with my brother Mike Quigley. Mike, Celtics sweep in Texas, the back-to-back against Houston and Dallas. What are your initial takeaways from those games? And as we, look ahead to Miami and some of the moves around the league, which we'll touch on in just a bit. But let's start in Texas and, your thoughts.
Oh, we definitely talked about the Houston game, and I was so wrong when I said that. I thought the Celtics were going to get blown out in Dallas. The effort level by the Celtics was just night and day, especially the second half of Houston to the entire game of what we saw in Dallas. And I know the Jays were awesome, and that's a big story in the Dallas game. But I want to focus on the first quarter defense that the Celtics played. And the reason I want to focus on that is because they came out shooting I know it was definitely 1 for 8. Maybe it was 2 for 11.
Yeah, it took that Holiday 3 from the corner, which hit the side of the backboard and then went around the room and to get them going. Yeah.
They could have easily been down like 16-3 or something crazy like that to start the game. But their effort defensively was there. I mean, they were just playing really hard. And even on offense, they were moving the ball. You could just see the pace. You could see the effort. You could see the concentration. And I thought that's where they won the game because they could have lost it. A lot of teams can lose the game at that, starting down by so much. And the other part of it, too, is that I took from that game is that if the Celtics play an isolation run offense in the playoffs, that team doesn't have a chance against the Celtics because that's where they thrive. They really thrive against teams that really just focus on not moving the ball and that ISO play with their star players like the Cleveland Cavaliers do. And like we saw with Dallas, where you have two extremely talented guys like Kyrie Irving and Luka who are going to get their points. But the Celtics' help defense is just so good. And they struggle against teams that move the ball well. But against like James Harden run teams like the Clippers and Dallas, you see their strength. They're really good on-ball defenders and they communicate well. And I was really impressed with the defensive effort really for the entire game. Even when Dallas was making their runs, I felt like it was tough. They had to work for everything.
Yeah, no, I mean, Dallas, I thought was the perfect team for the Celtics to play under this situation where it's 11 games in 18 days or something like that, another back-to-back on the road. Clearly looks sluggish against Houston and maybe part of the reason they didn't shoot well at the end of the game in Denver is maybe there was, their legs are feeling it a little bit. But what Dallas does is they just make it easy on you. If you have guys that can guide you out. The only time the Celtics, I thought, got in trouble defensively is that game is when they helped off the corners. And they, Green and folks like that got open, or Keebler got open looks. You just don't need it. If you have the ability to not help against Kyrie and Luka and live with them making some shots, you're going to be fine because the other players stop playing, as you saw in the fourth quarter. Dallas role players just stopped playing. They're just sitting there waiting for the catch. Celtics got a rebound, and they were struggling to score early in the fourth, but they got a few runouts that led to layups that Dallas didn't get back on that, just kind of sealed the game. And then, Jalen and Tatum just completely outplayed Luka and Kyrie. And part of that is, they got better teammates. And the style of play that Jason and Jalen play isn't just solely ISO, although that is what Brown did to Luka going down the stretch in the fourth quarter.
Several times, yeah.
And, you mentioned the Celtics are good against teams that might isolate in the playoffs. Yeah, for sure. That's always been their history. Unfortunately, you don't see too many of those teams anymore. I think Dallas is a bit of an outlier. Maybe Milwaukee will be a bit of that. We'll see what happens with Doc going there. But the other thing they do is they've always done well is they find matchups on the defensive when they're on offense. And if you have guys that can't guard their yard, they will abuse you because the Celtics have so many guys that can attack that. Their entire starting five. So, I think Dallas, 4 days off and, being geared up, ready to go against the team with the best record in the league wasn't enough for them, which really shows their deficiencies. But that said, you're right. The Celtics came out with fight, and I think that fight set the tone for the entire game. This could have easily been a scheduled loss. There's a lot of teams where their star players just would have checked out of this thing early and, and chalked it up to the grind of the NBA schedule. Celtics didn't do that, which they deserve credit for. 82 is hard. January and February is really hard. January for the Celtics has been spectacularly hard. And they showed up. So it's good. Which leads us into tonight and these moves. This is a game, I think anytime you played the Heat this year, you probably had it circled if you're a Celtics fan.
Is Rozier playing?
Right? What's that?
Is Rozier playing?
He played last night. So I said,
oh, wow.
He played last night.
Okay.
And let's start right there, Mike, and then we can get into the matchup. Terry Rozier traded for Kyle Lowry and a pick to Charlotte. Rozier going to Miami. What are your initial thoughts on this move, how it affects the East, how it affects the Heat, and what it means for the Celtics?
I thought it was a no-brainer for the Heat. I think that they always needed another guy who can get his own shots outside of Jimmy Butler and Bam. Here's a third option. Fourth, really, with Tyler Hero. But also, that Kyle Lowry contract was just abysmal, and he wasn't playing well this year. And to be able to move that in just one first-round pick and bring in a 25 points a game scorer, which, on a good team, he's probably not that, but a guy who can score, get his own shot, he's extremely athletic, he's extremely competitive. He tries on defense. He's not great, but I think Terry Rozier makes him a better team. It's interesting against the Boston Celtics, though. The Heat have always relied and beat the Celtics with ball movement. And the Celtics being a little late getting to three-point shooters and the Heat getting hot. Traditionally in the last three playoff series, that's really where the Celtics have struggled. And then, Bam causing problems defensively and Jimmy causing problems defensively and going off. But I wonder if it makes it a little bit easier for the Celtics to cover the Heat now if Terry Rozier is the starting point guard, because he's more of an ISO player. He's not a guy who moves the ball. The ball gets stuck with him. So I don't know. I think it makes the Heat a better team, but maybe when we think about a series against Boston, maybe it makes it a little bit easier defensively with the way the Celtics play.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Rozier's a herky-jerky god. One of those guys, he's not on the level of Maxey or anything, but it's kind of that similar style of play where he's constant movement, he's kind of unpredictable with the ball. And the Celtics have just kind of struggled with those guys for years. Their guards are bigger, stronger guards that can guard their yard, but, you know, have a little bit of trouble with herky-jerky, good foot speed guards, which Terry Rozier is. And,
Certainly.
you know, Lowry has been just such a minus player. And look, the Heat were able to accomplish it last year with ball movement and shooting, but they had a horseshoe up their ass. Like, I that doesn't happen. It happened with them, and all the credit in the world. They made their shots, and some of that takes balls and guts, and some of it's luck to shoot the way they did in the games that they won. That is not a way to live. And you can't go into another playoffs thinking that's going to happen again. So credit their front office for bringing in a guy that can score on his own, because you need that in the playoffs desperately. And he's not a great defender, but I thought he was a better defender in Boston than he was in Charlotte. And he has tremendous wingspan. Like, he is long. Like, I think we see him as a point guard, but his arms are just extraordinarily long. His hands are huge. And he's got good feet. And I think when he's locked in, he can be a solid defender, a good defender. I mean, that was his MO coming out of college, if we remember, coming out of Louisville. He really struggled offensively for his first couple of years. I think he's a great addition. I just do. And he's not a star. He shouldn't be the tipping point in the series, but I think he makes things more difficult. I think he makes them better. And I think it's a move they had to make, because with Indiana bringing in Siakam, with, you know, the Knicks making their move and really playing really, really good basketball right now. I think they're 10-2 of their last 12. Miami's in danger again of being in the play-in. Like, and again, that's just playing with fire. You could be gone, you know, with a rolled ankle. It's like, that's I don't care how good you are. That's what you're risking when you play in that playing game. And they need to be in that 4, 5, 6, and there's no guarantee that they're going to be there right now. So this was a move they had to make, and it makes them, you know, a team once again you don't want to see in the playoffs. So, yeah. And what I think is I think their best lineup now is, you know, Rozier, Duncan, Butler, Bam, and then, you know, whether it's Caleb Martin or Kevin Love. Depending on the matchup, it's going to be interesting if they continue to start Hero, or if they put him off the bench, which I think makes them better. And if he's going to be able to accept that. Yeah, he certainly has a large ego and a high opinion of himself as a basketball player. I think they've been better without him in big moments in the playoffs. And I just wonder how they're going to manage that, because if they're able to manage that and have him come off the bench and, you know, not necessarily part of their closing lineups in big games, they'll be better off for it. So,
well, his I think it's a good point, because his rookie year he came off the bench and he was just a microwave. I remember he was cooking the Celtics.
Oh yeah,
he had a 30-point game in the bubble and the Eastern Conference Final.
He'll go off.
And he's been forced to accept that role in the past. I don't know if he was open to it. I think it makes more sense just because he's a liability defensively. Offensively, he's up there. He is a really talented scorer.
He is.
You know, he can shoot from range. He can get to the hoop. He can pass. He does it. He has handles. He really does it all. That's the type of guy.
Not a physical offensive player, though.
No. But he's good. So if he can buy into that role, certainly. I don't know what you get if you trade him. I don't know if you get the same value back. The Heat are desperate. I think the Heat are desperate for some size. That killed them against Denver. It should have killed them against the Celtics, and it didn't, but it should have. That's a team that, outside of Bam, what do they really have? They really don't have any power forwards that can defend. They don't have a lot of shot blocking. They don't have guys who can score in the post. So maybe they look to move Tyler Hero to bring that in. But if they don't, they have 4 guys on their team that can get really hot, which makes them a tough matchup. So I think it was a no-brainer for them. For Charlotte, you need to get what you can get, I guess, for Terry Rozier. I would have hoped they would have gotten more, but hey, they're just a bad franchise.
Yeah, this better not be their last move. Like, they should be looking to make others, including, whether it's a buyout of Lowry, but try to trade him first, Hayward, Bridges, whomever else they can get rid of there, because they're just, trending in the same direction season after season. So we bring us to the Celtics. And
Charlotte hasn't won a playoff series. I think it's since 2003.
Random facts you get on the Hot Foul podcast that you don't care about.
And like the thing with Miles Bridges, I can't stand that guy. If he gets to go play for a contender, that's going to fucking piss me off.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Celtics Heat tonight. The Heat have lost 6 out of the last 7 since Jimmy Butler has come back. I think that's correct. Maybe it's not that much, but it's something like that. They
pretty bad.
Yeah, since in the games Jimmy Butler has played, where they were winning like 7 of 8. They really, Memphis played nobody last night and they're trying to lose games, and they lost, and Memphis controlled the game pretty much from second quarter to the final buzzer. Rozier played for his first game, so that could have something to do with it. You're trying to incorporate a guy, and it can be a little bit difficult. But once again, this is an inconsistent regular season team, a team that plays down to their competition, team that's playing with fire. Their talent is much better than, I think, their record and results. But they always rise to the occasion against the Celtics. We'll have to edit that out. Oh boy, that was a big sneeze. Maybe we'll just keep it in.
Yeah, well, we'll get
everybody. Hopefully you didn't catch anything. But go ahead, Mike, with this matchup.
Yeah, so we're getting the Heat on the second night of a back-to-back, which is really helpful. The thing that concerns me is it's the last road game of a small road trip for the Celtics, so that can always be a sign of not great things to come with any NBA team. I expect, no matter what the circumstances, that the Heat are going to try to make this game ugly. They're going to try to force Jalen Brown to go left, and they're going to foul him and foul him and foul him and try to get away with it. They're going to do the same thing to Tatum. They're going to hope the refs don't call the fouls, and they just hack our guys and get our guys frustrated, and that's the way the Heat play. If the Celtics play at their pace and the Celtics move the ball well and stay focused and mentally tough, they should typically beat the Heat pretty handily. But you never know what's going to happen against Miami. And I'm also interested in the Bam Adebayo and Porzingis matchup. Yeah. Earlier this year, Porzingis had a really hard time covering Bam. So maybe we see more of Holiday on Bam tonight and other matchups to assist with that. Maybe Porzingis just doesn't have the foot speed to handle what Bam brings, because Bam has, nice ball handling skills, good footwork, and that could be a really tough matchup for any center, especially somebody the size of Porzingis. That's tough to stay in front of a guy like Bam. So be interested to see how the Celtics defend Bam tonight.
Yeah, it makes me really, look back fondly on those healthy Rob Williams days that were few and far between, because that was the only guy I've ever seen Bam struggle against. It's just someone that could match his athleticism and move his feet and, the length. The Celtics really have struggled against Bam, Sans, Rob, where, Bam really struggled against a healthy Rob Williams. So, that's an interesting matchup. I think you're going to get a wounded dog tonight. I think you're going to get a wounded animal coming at you. They have lost a bunch. They're coming off 2 bad losses. They're at home. They've already lost to you once. They're dropping further in the standings. You always get their best effort. I think you're going to get more of that tonight. This is going to be a tough one. I think if they had won last night, a sleepy game against Memphis, and, all their starters played 28 plus minutes, I'd say the Celtics are in a real good spot. I think even though they played all those minutes and it's a back-to-back, I think you got a wounded dog. I think what's going to be important for the Celtics for tonight's game, especially with Rozier. You got a new player in there, and particularly where he's a guard. It's going to be really important for the Celtics to take away their first action off their sets. Miami is a team that lives in the half court. Does Rozier know what to do within an offense when the first thing breaks down right now? He hasn't been there long. So you have some chances to really create some confusion defensively with a new guy in there that is playing point guard, right? Or at least playing the off guard. So central to what they want to do, they're not going to have him. They normally wouldn't have that position just go hang out in the corner. So that I think is important. And then, Miami is historically has come out after you with zones. Teams, that have gone to zone against the Celtics this year have paid for it. Because of the addition of Porzingis. I mean, what do you do with him at the foul line? And then if you move him off the foul line, you just throw Tatum there. So in the cutting of White and Holiday, I mean, they're as good as cutters as you have in the league. Really has caused problems. So and the other thing is Joe Mazzulla has done really good job of when teams go zone, it doesn't take long for him to get Sam Hauser in there. So I'd be interested to see if they do that. I do think they have more guys with the addition of Rozier that can man up than they've had in the past. But always an interesting game. 3 of the last 4 Eastern Conference Finals. There's probably not a better rivalry in the NBA. The NBA really hasn't done a good job of building this rivalry up the way they should. How often do you see 3 of the last 4 conference finals against, 2 teams and 2 teams that are really always there? So I expect another good fight. It always is. This game, the thing that scares me, this game is way more important to Miami than it is to the Celtics. As you mentioned, last game of the home trip, Celtics are playing relatively well. It's been a tough schedule and they've gotten through it. Miami, on the other hand, it hasn't been a tough schedule and they are, not doing well. So this is, huge importance for the Heat, I think. As compared
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other part of it too is like January's not over yet. The Celtics have one more back-to-back to end this month against 2 playoff teams. So it's been
but they're at home.
month.
They're at home.
I know, but still, it's still just been like.
I kind of circle this. I hear what you're saying. In the games, they're playing good games, teams at home, but I kind of circle this as the end of it. Maybe the first game back, is always tough at home, but I just look at this as they're not saying they're going to sweep all the games and win them all, but this is, to me, this is the end of it. Yeah.
I don't know, Jim. The way the Pacers get up to the playoffs now, it's the 5th time.
Yeah,
I feel like the Pacers are going to be.
I know what you mean. Like, competition is good. Like the Pelicans and the Clippers. I just more look at it as when it comes to this team, because their talent is so good, it's what does the schedule look like in terms of when you're playing and where you're playing. And now they get to be comfortable. They get to go back to their house. They get to eat when they want. They get to, and they're there for isn't it a 7-game homestand that they have coming up? Or 6-game?
Yeah.
It's an extended homestand.
They got the Lakers coming in.
And not to say that they don't screw up and blow a game or 2 there, but I don't see that as what they've been dealing with. I just, the competition's really good, but the pace of the schedule is much, much different. Hey, Mike, before we close, Milwaukee, this was surprising, bizarre. I think, you got to look directly at Giannis here. They fire Adrian Griffin. They have the 2nd best record in the East, even though they're not their record. I don't care what anyone says. They have not been 30-13 or whatever their record is. They are not that good. And they, day later hired Doc Rivers, who was the premier color guy for ESPN. The big move they made this offseason, ABC, ESPN. And he's now going to be coaching the Bucks. I have a few thoughts, but you go first. This whole thing was really friggin' weird.
Yeah, first off, the ESPN broadcast is going to suck. But then my second thought is that Yeah, this is a bizarre situation, and bringing in Doc Rivers probably helps you in the regular season, but I can't remember the last time this guy has coached a team that had an offensive identity other than ISO ball. Really going back to even some of those Celtics teams and the way they blew with all that talent on offense in the playoffs and big moments where they, lacked ball movement. They lacked any creativity. Same with the Clippers. Same with Philadelphia last year in those last two games against Boston. Um, I mean, his teams always show up defensively. And they usually have good, solid defensive game plans, probably really good inbound plays, things like that. But his teams just always fall apart offensively, no matter what the talent is, no matter what the mix of all-star, MVP talented players are. I expect that the Bucks are going to run into a series where they're matched up against a tough defensive team, and it's just going to be Damian Lillard dribbling the ball up, doing ISO, either shooting or finding somebody, and the same with Giannis, and there's going to be nothing. There's going to be no ball movement, no involvement of Brooke Lopez, no involvement of Chris Middleton, no involvement of their other sharpshooters. It's just his MO. It's what I expect of him. He's not a good offensive coach, and in the NBA, especially now, that's what teams need. So they'll play hard for him in the regular season. They'll win a bunch of games. They might even challenge the Celtics now for the 1 seed, because that's like Doc's MO. They'll be a really good defensive team, I bet. Not great,
No,
but
I
they'll
don't
be a
think
lot
so.
better than they.
Yeah,
They'll be a lot better than they've been. Their talent dictates a lot of that. I would suspect they're going to try to make a trade with Pat Connaughton and their backup point guard there to combine those contracts and maybe bring in another wing. But yeah, I think they'll play hard for him, but they're just not going to have an identity that's going to help them win.
Yeah, I think, this was a Giannis move. He wanted Griffin gone. I think Giannis had a foothold in getting rid of Budenholzer too, even though he pretended like that was his guy. Giannis has his brother there. I think you mentioned to me wanted his other brother signed before. But they didn't really give this guy Griffin a chance. I feel like from the beginning of the year, they talked about how poor of a job he was doing, communicating with players, this, that, and the other thing. And I know defensively they've been a horror show, but I'm not sure that's coaching. They don't have a single defensive wing or guard on that team that scares you. If you have any type of penetrating guard, you can get whatever you want. If you have wings with skills, you're going to get whatever you want against these guys. They have a couple good rim protectors, but what good are those if you can just drag them out and get to the hoop whenever you want? You can't switch because they don't have the players to do it. They're not a real good zone team because you can just shoot over the top of most of their guys. They'll get better defensively, I guess. Not that Doc's a defensive mastermind. But I feel like that's more of a Jimmy and Joe's problem than an X's and O's problem that Milwaukee has there. And even if they get a little better during the regular season and the playoffs, that shit just gets exposed. There's, talent takes over and there's not really much you can do about that. Unless you get a team that, just settles. And then that's on the other team and not really you. So in terms of making a trade and getting a wing is the hardest thing to do. So good luck. And they don't have guys to go get it, and they don't have picks to go get a good wing. They're not available. You end up with guys like Jay Crowder, who can't play anymore. I think the better bet is to try to find a defensive-minded guard, because they have none of them right now. As far as Doc, yeah, everything you said was true. And we'll see. His teams have folded in really big moments. And there is this belief that he is the guy to coach superstars. Well, the last two spots he's had problems with all-stars. He had, problems with Kawhi and Paul George, and he had problems with Harden. So you want to say Giannis is a different type of cat, and he's not those guys? But is he? With what he's shown this season, getting coaches fired, the whole that's my ball thing against Indiana, demanding his brothers on the team. Like, my view of Giannis is evolving, and not for the better. And I wonder if Doc's the right guy, and it's clearly a desperation move for a team that, second best record in the East, but like I said, not nearly as good as their record. And you might get a bump. They may play better for a week, maybe even a month, but their warts, you can't cover them with Band-Aids. They're too goddamn big. And, maybe I'll be proven wrong about this because, the offensive tandem of Giannis and Dame really is spectacular. And maybe I'm not giving that enough credit to overcome their deficiencies. But I just don't. They were this, odds-on favorite before to win the NBA Finals before the Celtics brought in Holiday. Then they were number 2. I don't have them in my top 4 right now. And I'm not saying that as someone that's guaranteeing the Celtics win. I think there are teams that can beat the Celtics. I think the Celtics are the most talented team, but I look at Philly, I look at Denver, and I think, gosh, in a series, I can envision ways Celtics don't prevail. I have a hard time closing my eyes and watching them against Milwaukee and not seeing a way that they don't prevail. I think Milwaukee struggles against any team with any type of fight right now. And like I said, maybe this is the answer. I don't think it is. That's my thought on the Bucks. I'm starting to feel about them, Mike, the way I used to feel about Philly. I do not like watching them. I don't think they play winning basketball, and I think there's a ceiling on this team. Those are my thoughts on the Bucks. I don't know if you have anything to add to close this pod before we go away and talk to people again soon.
No, that's it, man. Good pod. Go Celtics tonight against Miami. It'll be a good game.